Okay, so this is part 2 of our revision series. Okay, so let's look at the problems. Okay, so take a look at this problem. So give it a try. Okay, so here, if I take this as the tower and this is the horizontal ground. So if you project a particle horizontally, okay, so the speed is given as 16 meter per second. Now horizontally, there is no force on the particle. So this horizontal velocity will remain as it is. Okay, but because there is gravitational force acting on the particle, it picks up speed in the vertical direction. So we know that it will move along a parabolic path and then it will hit the ground. So the problem says as it hits the ground, the velocity is making an angle of 37 degrees. So if I look at the components of this velocity, the horizontal velocity should remain as it is, 16 meter per second. And then it is gaining vertical velocity. So let's call that as Vy. And then from here, I can write Vy by the horizontal component 16 as tan 37. That is 3 by 4. It is given in the question. So Vy would be 12 meter per second. So very good. So that is the right answer. Okay, so now try this problem. The problem says a water fountain on the ground sprinkles water all around. So if I, let's say, take a position and then say the water fountain is located here. Okay, so the speed is v. Okay, so the water, you can say that it is the water particles are moving along the parabolic path and then they'll hit. Okay, so if you vary the angle, I think the water goes all over the place. Okay, and then the water can also, if you switch the direction of the sprinkler, it can also move in this direction. So basically it can actually cover a circular region. Okay, so you can imagine the circular region is horizontal. So we're basically trying to increase the range as much as possible. Okay, so if I get that R max, so the area, required area would be pi into R max square. So I hope you understand that, right? Now, how do I get the maximum possible range? So if you look at the expression for range, you know that it is u square sine 2 theta by g. Okay, so for maximum range, I will select an angle of 45 degrees so that sine 2 theta becomes 1. You can see here. Okay, so for maximum range, so theta is 45 degrees. So R max would be, I think initial velocity is v, so v square by g. So if I substitute here, I'll get pi into v to the power 4 by g square. And then the answer should be A. But I think if you look at this question, suppose if you're not sure how to get it, you can also guess. So dimensionally, if you see, velocity will have meter per second, and the acceleration due to gravity have meter per second square. Okay, so if you see, I need area is like in meter square. So immediately, if you see this, so this is like meter square, this is meter square. You can ignore this. And here it is meter to the power 4 and this is meter. Ignore this. And then you can actually take a guess. The area should involve pi only once. Okay. I mean, if you take a gut feel and then you can go with A. And then still, if you see the dimensions here also, this is again meter to the power 4 meter square. Just with the help of dimensions itself, you can answer the question. You understand?
Mm.
Okay, so let us move on. Okay, so take a look at this problem. Okay, so in this problem, there are two cars, masses are given. They're moving along a circle. So let's imagine a particle moving along a circle. So the car is represented by a particle. So if r is the radius, v is the speed, we know the centripetal acceleration that acts towards the center of the circle, that is v square over r. Okay. Now, if I split this, okay, so if I take v by r, now how do I get the time taken to go around the circle once? So the time taken would be, if the particle goes, the car goes around the circle once, it would cover a distance of 2 pi r.
Mm.
Okay, and the speed is v. Okay, so that's the time taken, distance by speed. So here, if I manipulate this a bit, okay, so I just multiply by 2 pi and then divide by 2 pi. So what do I have here? The centripetal acceleration, I can write it as 2 pi into v by t. Are we okay here?
Mm.
Okay. So now, I mean, if I write like this, then I don't have velocity, right? So since I don't have velocity, what I will do is, instead of writing like this, okay, so I can actually square this. Okay, so this is what I'm trying to say. So if I take 1 over r as a factor, and then I can square this. So v by r whole square. Okay, so here I know if divide by 2 pi and then multiply by 2 pi, I'm not doing anything. So I'll end up having 4 pi square by r into v by 2 pi r whole square, which is 1 over t square. Okay, again, you don't have to write this everything. If you just recognize the fact that the centripetal acceleration is inversely proportional to the radius, that is good enough. Okay. Am I doing a mistake here? Can you see, can you spot the mistake? I might be doing a mistake here. Just look at here. I was not at all careful. See, if you look at v square over r, if I'm trying to get v square by r square, I should have r in the numerator, not denominator.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I was not at all careful. Okay. So here you can clearly see that the acceleration is directly proportional to r in this case. Okay. So you can simply write the acceleration for the car 1 and the acceleration for car 2 will be r1 by r. Again, in these examples, you don't have to write everything. So some of it you will do it in your head and then you'll quickly arrive at this answer. Okay. And then another thing, if you want to guess, acceleration does not depend on mass.
Mm.
Okay. So,
Mm.
okay, so you can take that, like most of the cases. So you can eliminate A and B. And then gut feel, okay, different radii, okay, different cars. You should say, okay, maybe one is not the answer. Then you take C and then move ahead. Okay, you should do this. Okay, so I mean, I'm not saying that you should do this for the problems that you are very confident. Towards the end, like for the problems that you're not very confident, you should like be brave and then guess. Take it. But again, after eliminating a few of the options.
Yeah.
Okay, so try this problem. Okay, so for the projectile, the initial velocity is given. We are asked to find the equation of the trajectory. So to get that, we assume that the particle is projected from the origin. Okay, so the initial velocity horizontally, you have 1 meter per second, and then vertically you have uh, 2 meter per second. Now, as it goes, you can pick some time. Okay, so at some time, the coordinates are x comma y. So horizontally, there is no acceleration. So you can write x is equal to speed into time. Okay, so which is speed is 1 into t. So if assuming that it reaches this point p in time t. And then vertically you have acceleration. So you're going to use s is equal to ut plus half a t square. I know, I mean, there is that equation of trajectory which we can use, but I'm like trying to do this problem without that. Okay, so you can always split a motion in two-dimension problem as two independent 1D motion problems. So the vertical displacement is y. Initial vertical velocity uy is 2. So 2t, and then plus half, and then this is minus 10, and then t square. So now from here, you know x is t, so you just substitute that. That means t is x. So you'll get 2x minus 5x squared. Okay, very good. So the answer is A. And if you remember that trajectory equation, you can also use that. I think for this problem, going by the basic ideas is much better. Okay, so x tan theta minus half g x square by u square cos square theta. You remember this?
Yeah.
Very useful. So because of these velocities, you know, tan theta would be vertical component by horizontal component. So that is 2. So you'll get 2x minus g is 10, 10 by 2, x square, u square. But you'll have to get a square root of, sorry, vector sum of the velocities. So that's like the square root of 1 square plus 2 square. You have to be careful there. Okay. So that is root 5. So that's the initial velocity. So if I'm squaring, I'll get 5. And then cos square theta would be what here? Okay, so if you have a triangle, 2, 1, and then this is theta, and then this is root 5. Cos square theta is 1 by
5.
yeah, 1 by root 5 whole square. So this is 1 by 5. But here,
No,
where are we
cos
going?
square theta is in the denominator, so 5 gets cancelled.
Cos square theta is in the denominator. See, I think the normal approach is much better. Again, we don't see, I was making a mistake. So thanks for pointing that out. Okay, so it's in the denominator. So you get here 1 by root 5 whole square. So again, you'll get the same equation. So very good. Now, do you also remember there's another useful form of this trajectory equation? Okay, so keep that also in mind. Okay, so if you have y is equal to x tan theta minus half g x square by u square cos square theta. So the other form is also sometimes very convenient. Okay, so you take the expression for range and then you manipulate the above equation. So some trigonometric manipulation, simple one. So you get x tan theta into 1 minus x by r. Okay, so this is also sometimes very useful. Keep these in mind. Okay, so all right, beta.
Yeah.
So let us move on. Okay, so take a look at this problem. Okay, so the problem says you have a locomotive which is moving with linear momentum p. Okay, so let's just imagine that this is the locomotive. Okay. And then let's say mass is m. The linear momentum is p. We'll just take some velocity u. Okay. So p, I can say it is m into u. Now, because of the friction force, it is going to stop. Okay, so because the engine is switched off, now the friction will take over, let's say. Here we're just treating the locomotive as a particle, okay, simple block. So the friction force, we know the normal force is mg. So the friction force would be mu k mg. So the acceleration in the backward direction, okay, so A would be friction force divided by mass, so which is mu kg. Now here we are asked to find the distance covered by the locomotive before it stops. So we can use the kinematic equation. Which one? I can use v square minus u square is equal to 2as. So right side, I'll take it as positive. So the final velocity will be 0. So the initial velocity would be u square is equal to, the acceleration is to the left. So I'm going to take it as negative. So mu k into g. And then displacement is what we are after. Okay, so the displacement is u square by 2 mu k g. But if I look at this, I don't have the initial velocity. Instead of that, I have initial linear momentum. So I can rewrite in terms of linear momentum, right? Which will be p by m. Sorry, yeah. So velocity will be p by m. So I should get p square. I think m square will be in the denominator. So 2 mu k m square g. So the answer should be B. Okay. This problem, you can also do it little differently, beta. So if you take the locomotive, so I know there is a friction force acting to the left, which is mu k mg. Now, if the locomotive, let's say, stops after, let's say, a distance d, suppose. Okay. Now, you know the kinetic energy, you can write it as half mu square, but this expression is also very useful. You can write it as p square by 2m. You might have seen this. Okay. And then if I use net work done is equal to change in kinetic energy. Okay. Because the friction force is doing negative work, the change in kinetic energy will be like the initial kinetic energy itself, because it is stopping. The final kinetic energy is 0. So I can say negative work done. So minus mu k m g into d is equal to final kinetic energy is 0. Initial kinetic energy is p square by 2m. So from here you will get d as p square by 2 mu k m square g. So sometimes this is actually better. You understand? So you can do it either way. You're okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So okay, I know this is slightly a lengthy problem. So patiently read and then answer it. Okay. So give it a try. Okay. So see, sometimes these lengthy problems are actually easy. Okay. So what is this problem saying? You have a wire bent in the shape of a parabola. So we know this is like y is equal to kind of x square graph. So it should look, let's say if I take x and y axis. So it looks, this is the wire. Okay. Now, the problem says the bead is initially at rest at the lowest position. So that is at rest there. All right. Now, if I give some acceleration to the right, okay, so if I give some acceleration to the right, let's say A is the acceleration, what will happen if there is an observer? Let's say, imagine there is a massless, tiny observer standing on the wire. So he will say that there is a pseudo force there will pseudo force acting on the particle. Now pseudo force always acts in the opposite direction of the acceleration of the frame. Okay, so that is one. Okay, pseudo force will always act in the opposite direction. So that's the pseudo force. The magnitude of the pseudo force is mass of the object being analyzed multiplied by the acceleration of the frame. So you're going to apply a force MA to the left. Okay, so are you okay so far? Then what will
Yeah.
happen with respect to this observer standing on the wire? The bead will move to the left. Okay, but as it climbs up, you have gravitational force also. So now there is like there are two forces acting on the bead. Even here, the gravitational force is acting, but the normal force of the bead will balance it. So now if I take a look at the picture when the bead moves a little to the left. So let's say the bead goes to this position, let's say here. So it is able to stay there, suppose. And then we are asked to find this distance from the y-axis. Now here, what forces are acting on the bead? So if I take a look at the forces, this is a pseudo force MA acting, and then I have MG. Now, if the bead can stay there at rest, okay, so can I say the forces along the tangential direction at that point, okay, so if I take a tangent here, the forces should balance. Now, the trick here is this. If you look at that tangent, okay, so if you think carefully, you can actually treat it as a inclined plane. You understand? Okay, so the bead is literally on an inclined plane. Let's say this angle is theta. Okay, now I can say that, let's say if I take a perpendicular, so we know this angle will be theta, and this is 90 minus theta, so this angle is theta. So now along the tangent, all I have to do is make net force is equal to 0. Okay, so the force components along the tangent, let's look at the force components along the tangent. So upwards I have MA cos theta, and then downwards I have mg sin theta. So then all I have to do is balance it. Then you are done. Okay, so MA cos theta, if it is equal to mg sin theta, the bead will be at rest. So now what is this giving us? Tan theta is A by G. Now, here a little maths. Tan theta is slope of the tangent at that point. Okay, so tan theta is like dy by dx at that location. Is it okay? So dy by dx is A by G. Now you can get dy by dx. So what is dy by dx? It is 2kx. All right. Now, but this coordinate is x coordinate anyway. Okay, so here I think we can just write the magnitude. We don't have to worry about the slope being, let's say, negative. So dy by dx, I can just write 2kx. So they're anyway asking x coordinate. Slope is negative. X coordinate is also negative here. So x, I can just write it as a by 2gk. You understand? I know. I mean, this is a little on the difficult side. But the reason I'm discussing this problem is this was asked many times. Okay, so even in mains, okay, this was asked several times. So they like just change that coefficient in the front of x square and then ask questions. Sometimes they make it x cube also. Okay, so this is a pretty common problem. So understand, let's say wherever the bead is at rest, if you draw a tangent, okay, so you can literally visualize that tangent as an inclined plane. So the bead is like almost on that inclined plane, and then you know what to do for inclined planes. So if you take the forces along the, let's say, tangent or the incline now, if you balance the forces, then the bead will be at rest. So when you do that, you're getting ma cos theta as mg sin theta, and then tan theta is a by g. So you should quickly realize that tan theta is nothing but the slope of the tangent at that location. And then from there, you will, if you take the derivative, you will get the x coordinate. You understand? Yeah.
Yeah.
The answer is this. Okay, so try to solve this problem. Nice. Okay, so this is actually a good problem. Very nice. So the answer is 4.9 in the vertical direction. Now, for this problem, let's say if I don't want to literally solve everything, okay, so A option can be simply eliminated. You know why? Because if you are looking at relative acceleration in the vertical direction, why would that be in the horizontal direction? First of all, so forget that. Okay, now definitely this looks 9.8. They will. It looks unlikely. Okay, so you can ignore that. They're on a different inclined planes. So ignore this and then select this. You're not doing anything here.
Mhm.
You understand? So you can play around like that. But again, okay, I don't want you to do that every time. So, you know, on an inclined plane, along the incline, the acceleration is, oh, so I'll pick a
MG
different color
sin.
here. So the acceleration is g sine theta. So I can say g sine theta is root 3 by 2, g root 3 by 2. Similarly here, g sine 30, which is g by 2. Now, if I get the vertical component here, this will be 30 degrees. So I'll take cos of this. Okay, so g root 3 by 2 multiplied by cos 30, which is root 3 by 2. So we will get here 3g by 4. Okay, and then here if I take its vertical component, I will have to do, this will be 60 degrees now. Okay, so it will be g by 2 cos 60. Cos 60 is another half. So I'll get g by 4. Here, okay? So now the relative acceleration will be the difference of them because they are pointing in the same direction. So 3g by 4 minus g by 4, I'll get 2g by 4, so which is g by 2. So I think looking at the options, g should be 9.8. So D is the answer. Very good. Okay, so take a look at this one. So let's discuss this problem. Again, this problem can be solved without doing much. Okay, so let's look at the force given. Okay, given the force as a function of time, we are asked to identify the velocity as a function of time. Okay, now let's look at this. It's an exponential function, e to the power minus bt. So that means initially at t equal to 0, the force will be maximum. The force is F naught. Now when, let's say after a very long time, t is infinity, the force becomes 0 because this function can be written like this. So F naught by e to the power bt. So after a very long time, the denominator is like very large value. So the force becomes 0. So you should guess if force is 0, that means acceleration is 0. So that means the velocity must become constant after some time. Okay. Now these doesn't look like that. I think you can simply eliminate, let's say A and
A
D.
and D.
Okay. So quickly get out of the out of our way. And then another thing you need to realize is the force is exponential. So that means initially the force is like very large and then slowly it is dropping to 0. So the velocity the speed should exponentially grow. Okay, so this looks unlikely. So the answer should be C. You understand? So this is like by just appreciating the mathematical functions and then looking at the graphs, we can answer. So sometimes what happens, if such problems are asked, see these questions do appear in NEET also.
Mm.
So you should not like panic. I mean, you can actually like use your maths knowledge a little bit, functions and graphs, and then you can answer these questions easily. Now, let us say if we want to solve it mathematically. Okay, so let us do that also. So here, if force is given, acceleration dv by dt is force by mass. So we can write that as F naught by m into e to the power minus bt. Now all, and this is not bad also. Even maths is also easy. So if you separate the variables, so dv will be F naught by m into e to the power minus bt. So into dt. So you can integrate both sides. So it is starting from rest at t equal to 0, 0. So at time t, we want velocity. So the left hand side is anyway v. So right hand side, if you see F naught by m, the integral of this is e to the power minus bt, and then you divide by minus b, and then substitute these limits. Okay, so let's, I think then what will that be? V is equal to F naught by, what do I have? MB minus MB. And then I have e to the power minus bt. And then if I substitute t equal to 0, I'll get, I'll get 1, right? E to the, t is
1.
So this is 1. So if you look at this, I think in the denominator, if I flip that negative sign to positive sign, so I'll get 1 minus e to the power minus bt. Now this graph is clearly this one. You might have seen this many times. Okay. So you're okay with that?
Yeah.
So now, okay. So look at this question. So here that expression is useful. I think a little while ago we saw that, right? Kinetic energy can be written as p square by 2m. So the momentum, you can write it as square root of 2mk. So they have same kinetic energy. So the linear momentum is sort of proportional to square root of mass. So the heavier body should have higher linear momentum. Very nice. Okay, so now try this problem. So in this problem, we're asked to find the kinetic energy of the block after 4.5 seconds by looking at this graph, FT graph. Again, the idea is I can take kinetic energy as p square by 2m. Okay. Now, initial kinetic energy is anyway 0 because the block starts from rest. From the force time graph. Okay, so we need to understand area under time graph. What am I saying? Area under time graph? That's very wrong. Area under force versus time graph. This gives change in linear momentum. Okay. So that means because the initial momentum is 0, you're going to get only the final momentum. But you have to be careful here. Why do I say that you have to be careful? Any area above, let's say, time axis would be positive. Any area below time axis would be negative.
Negative.
So
Yeah.
that means here the area corresponds to negative or let's say decrease in linear momentum. Now, this is 1.5 seconds and this is 3 seconds. So if I use similar triangles, okay, so this is 4 newtons. So this, I think you can quickly say that that will be 2 newtons.
Mm.
Now, the positive area, if I use half base into height, half base is 3 seconds and then height is 4. So the linear momentum increases by, let's say, 6 units. Okay, we'll just write that. And here, if I do the same thing, half base into height. So base is 1.5 and then 2. So linear momentum decreases by 1.5. Okay, so the final momentum, so if you see the final momentum will be 6 minus 1.5. So that is 4.5. Okay, so kg meter per second. I think units are okay. Now the final kinetic energy would be what? P square by 2m. Okay, so if I do a P square, 4.45 square will be what? 2025. So I can write 20.25 and then divide by 2 into mass. So mass is 2. So what do I get? We are dividing by 4, so it will be like around
05.
5.06 joules.
Okay.
So I know, I mean, this is slightly on the difficult side, but it is doable, right?
I did the 4.5 and then
Oh, then, beta, then you are almost there. We've been looking at that expression, right? Kinetic energy is P square by 2m. So you're almost there. Okay, you would have got it. That actually makes us happy, right? Yeah, you are almost there. I think conceptually you understood the force time graph, right? Yeah, good, very nice. Okay, so let's just check. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so try this problem. Okay, I remember you telling that your physics teacher told you that some of these questions where you have complicated expressions, the answer is often 0.
oh,
Okay, your teacher is right. Okay, sometimes yes, but again, we want to understand this. So if you look at this, the problem says that that is the expression of force, and there is a circle and the particle is moving, is taken around this circle. Okay, so the circle is centered at the origin. So this is x, y. Now, if you look at the force, okay, so if you look at the force, when the particle is, let's say, at some location here, x comma y, okay, I think the force is in which direction, if you think about it, okay. So the denominator is anyway same. So the denominator is same, right? So at this location, let's say this is x and this is y. Now, what is the direction of the force here? Just take a guess. What will be the direction of the force? The denominator is same. If you look at the force expression, the denominator is same. So what would be the force direction? Let's say OP is the line. With respect to OP, what do you think is the force direction?
tangent.
Tangent, why? Let's say if I have xi cap plus yj cap, how would that point? This is x and this is y. This is how it would look, right? The force will be along OP, no, beta?
Okay, okay.
Right. So I think if you look at that expression, everywhere it will be along OP.
Yeah, okay.
The particle is moving around the circle, so that means every time its displacement is at right angles. So then what is the answer?
0. Work done.
Yes. I mean, I know. I mean, by looking at that expression, sometimes students get terrified. Okay. But it's not that difficult.
No, but
But
then
again,
I haven't got these answers. How, like, I mean, I force into
that
displacement,
is,
displacement.
see, that what happens is uh, you should not only pay attention to formulae and then you're trying to calculate work done, force into displacement and so on, but you have to understand work done is not just force into displacement, it is the dot product of the
Yeah,
force and displacement, and then moreover if the force is changing, it is an integral of that. So that conceptual understanding is important.
yeah.
Now, if you want to, let's say, be more confident with this problem, what you can do is, let's say, if I radius is a, and this is, let's say, an angle theta, suppose, I can take x as a cos theta, and then y as a sine theta. Now substitute these values in the force expression. So what do we get here? So k into I have a cos theta, and then in the denominator, if you see, I think it will be a square sine square theta plus cos square theta. I'll get a cube, and then that is I cap plus I'll get a sine theta by a cube into j cap. Now, if you look at this, it will like k by a square into, I think once you have cos theta I cap plus sine theta j cap, you know, this is definitely pointing along OP, right? Or you can actually take the displacement as a vector and then take dot product. But we don't have to do that, right? You understand?
Yeah.
Okay. So D. But that's actually a useful tip by your teacher. Okay. So try this one. Good beta. So that is correct. So now if let's say look at the compressed state, when the spring is like compressed by maximum amount, let's say if X is the maximum compression, the elastic potential energy is half kx square. Now, if you're looking at maximum linear momentum, again, that is going to happen at when the block has maximum kinetic energy. So this should completely translate to the maximum kinetic energy, half mv square. I think we'll just write it as k, and then let's say this is maximum. Okay, so that we know we can actually write it as p square by 2m. You understand? So from here, we can say p square is basically mkx square, and then just substitute the values. Okay, so mass is 4, and then this is k is 4, and then this is 0.5 square. So from here, I think p is 4 into 0.5. So that would be 2 kg meter per second. Very nice. Good. I'm happy actually. Good. Okay, so now take a look at this problem. See, to solve this problem, two things. One, so suppose if I project a particle with velocity u, you know the maximum height it goes is u square by 2g. I think that you know, right? And then if you drop the particle here from this height, when it hits the ground, it will hit with u. Now, the other thing that you need to understand is if a particle hits the floor with velocity u, the ball, and then if the coefficient of restitution is e, suppose, it is going to come back with speed eu. You understand this? Okay, so now what we can do here is we're just trying to calculate the total distance covered by the ball. So let's say the ball starts from here. In the first instance, let's say height is h. It is going to hit with some velocity u. Okay, now everything is happening along this vertical line, but I'm showing you separately. Okay, so it is going to come back with eu. And you know that this h is actually u square by 2g. Okay, so this height. And then it is going to come back with eu. Again, keep in mind, everything is happening along this vertical line, but I'm showing you separately. So it will go to some height, not the same height. This will be eu whole square by 2g. It will go to that height and then it will come back again and then hit. So again, after that, it will become what? E times eu. So it will be e square u, and then it will go to some height. Okay, so this height will be e square u whole square by 2g, and then again come back, and then it keeps on like moving. Okay, so finally, because the coefficient of restitution is between 0 and 1, it is going to finally stop. So when we are trying to track the total distance covered, first time it is just falling once. So that is u square by 2g. And after that, you have two movements, up and down. You understand? So I
Yeah.
can take twice of, let's say, e square u square by 2g, and then plus this is e to the power 4 u square by 2g, and so on. Okay. And then what will this be? I'll get u square by 2g. From the second term, I can take u square by 2g common. So I have 2 into u square by 2g. Maybe I think I can just pull e square out, or maybe I can just leave e square inside. I have e square plus e square whole square, and so on. Now this is a infinite geometric series. You know the sum of an infinite geometric series? S
One.
infinity is a by 1 minus r.
Uh,
You remember this?
yeah.
Okay. So now what is the total distance? I think wherever I have u square by 2g, I can just substitute h.
H.
Okay. So I'll take, let's say, h plus, I think I have, this will be 2h. And then I have, first term is e square, and the common ratio is also e square. So I have e square by 1 minus e square. So I think if I take h as common, I'll get 1 plus e square by 1 minus e square. So now substitute the values. I think this is, what is the height given as? 64 meters. And then I have 1 plus 0.6 whole square, 1 minus 0.6 whole square. So 64, I think in the numerator, numbers are actually nice. So numerator I have 1.36, and the denominator I have 0.64. So what should this be? 136 meters? Yeah. So the option should be D. You understand, beta? Okay. Are we okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
Questions? I know this becomes little mathematical,
Uh,
but I think you are okay with that
yeah.
sum to.
I've seen this kind of.
You have seen this kind of
Yeah.
problems?
Yeah, like GP comes sometimes, like in some problems.
Yes, GP comes sometimes. Mostly this infinite series. So keep that in mind.
Yeah.
A by 1 minus r. Okay, so take a look at this problem. Let's discuss this. Okay. See, what is the problem saying? Let's say if you take this xy axis, particle A is moving towards the origin along x-axis. So the mass is 2 kg. And then what is the linear momentum of particle A? So let's call that as P1. Okay. So linear momentum will be 2 into 6. So let's say 16 units. Now particle B is moving along y-axis again towards the origin. So what is the linear momentum here? Let's take that as P2. So that is 3 into 4. So that is 12. Now, once they collide, they're actually sticking to one another. So now if you look at the direction, that's the direction of linear momentum. So that means once they become one object, the linear momentum should be in this direction. You're okay? So let's say the final linear momentum is P. Now, you know that initial linear momentum should be equal to final linear momentum if you take them as a system, because there is no external force from the conservation of linear momentum. You understand that? So that means this final momentum is basically vector sum of the initial momentum. So that is square root of p1 square plus p2 square. You have to take vector sum. Okay, so I think if you look at these numbers, they're nice. So I have 16 whole square plus 12 whole square. I can pull, let's say, 4 square out. So 4. And then after that, I have 4 square plus 3 square. So that is a 5. So the linear momentum is 20 units. Now, once I get this, I can find the loss in kinetic energy. Loss in kinetic energy is what? I'll get the initial kinetic energy. So initial kinetic energy is P1 square by 2m, or maybe you can write half mv square. So that is also okay. So 2 mass of the particle 1 plus P2 square by 2m2. Final kinetic energy is like P square by 2m. So this is the loss. Okay, now if I get P1 square, I think this is not really nice, but you understand you can also use half mv square. So if I do half mv square, I get what? Half into 2 into 8 square. So that is, this is 64 joules, plus for the second particle, half mv square would be half into 3, velocity is 4, so 4 square. So that is how much? 24. And then for this, I think p square by 2m is nice. So p square is 400 by 2 into total mass will be 2 plus 3, 5. So that is 40. Okay, so this is 88 and then minus 40. So we should get 48 joules. Okay? So maybe some calculation.
That's it. Like the loss in kinetic energy, I just did p squared by 2m. So, like the last p squared by 2m.
Oh, okay. No, sometimes that is called what? Sometimes what happens, I have seen this. We are happy with the part of the answer. It happens in between the problem. If you are happy with part of what you have accomplished, you might feel that that is the answer, and then that option will also be there in the let's say that that will be part of the options. Then we'll get into trouble. So you have to be very careful. Okay. So, but you are okay with this problem?
Yeah.
I think you had the concept.
Yeah.
Okay, so take a look at this problem. Okay, good. I think you understood here. So I think if I use the conservation of linear momentum, so initial momentum should be equal to final momentum. So initially the body is at rest, 0. So the final momentum should also be 0. For the, let's say if you take the 4 fragments as a single system. So now if you take this, let's say 3 of them are, let's say moving along 3 mutually perpendicular directions. So let's take them as x, y, z. Okay. So now imagine, okay, so because they have same kinetic energy, so that means they should have same linear momentum. Okay, identical particles. So the linear momentum along x-axis is p, let's say, and the linear momentum along y-axis is also p, and the linear momentum along z-axis is also p. Now, if I take the vector sum of these two, I mean, for 3 particles, for the 3 particles, I can write vectorially the linear momentum. I can write it as, let's say, p for the 3 particles, let's say. I can write it as p into I cap plus j cap plus k cap. Okay, or you can just simply write, if you are getting the magnitude of linear momentum, maybe I'll write p a b c, let's say 3 particles. So magnitude will be what? It will be simply root 3 times p. I think you know how to get that. So magnitude of this is also the magnitude of the fourth particle,
Yeah.
also the magnitude of momentum of the fourth particle. Okay, magnitude of momentum of fourth particle. I think you understand, right? But direction will be opposite. Okay, so if I take the vector sum of these two, it will be sum in 3D direction. The other particle will go in the opposite direction. But here, the final kinetic energy is what we are looking at. So let's say if I mark these particles as A, B, C, D. Okay, so A has linear momentum of P. So its kinetic energy will be P square by 2m. B also has the same kinetic energy. Same kinetic energy. D will have linear momentum is 3p, so that will be 3p square by 2m. So you can see this is k, 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 this is 3k. So the answer is 6k. Very nice, very nice. So you got it right. So 6k is correct.